Today we'll be going over the Shanks Red deck that I've been piloting lately. So we have Shanks from OP09. He's a red 5 life 5k leader. Once per turn, you may activate this effect when your opponent attacks. Give up to one of your opponent's leader or character's power minus 1000 for the turn. This is a very defensive ability, which helps you survive the early to mid game before you can start bringing out your big characters. So first we have Otama. She's a 1-drop with 2000 counter. On play, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2000 power during this turn. Most of the time, she's going to be sitting in your hand as a 2k, but occasionally it does come up where you need to reduce another 2000 power. So it's a nice option to have, but mostly just there for a 2k. Moving on, we have the 5-drop 6k Marco with counter 1000. So your turn on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 3000 power or less. And then he has an on KO effect where you may trash one of your events from your hand to play this character from the trash as rested. Please note that the on KO, it it comes in rested, so your turn on play, if it gets KO'd during your opponent's turn, you won't be able to use his on play ability. So just keep that in mind. He does have 1000 counter power, so at worst case, he's a 5/6 body. We have Shanks, which is the 10-drop 12k from OP06. On play, K up to one of your opponent's characters with 10,000 power or less. He has no counter, but he can remove a big body in the late game, which is good to help clear the way for us to finish up the game. Up next, we have Monkey D. Dragon from OP07. He is an 8-drop 9k power with Rush, no counter, and on play, you give your leader or up to one of your characters up to 2 rested Dawn. So that's really good. Like I said, no counter, which is kind of rough, but he has rush, and giving that 2 rested Dawn essentially just allows him to become down as a 9k and then push another character up an extra 2000 power. So very good card for the deck. I'm only running 2. I may end up moving it up, but I'll talk about what I may adjustments I'll make towards the end of the video. So up next we have Silver's Rayleigh from OP08. He's one of the secret rares there. An 8-drop 8k power, no counter. On play, choose up to 2 of your opponent's characters. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, you give one character minus 3000 power and the other minus 2000 power. After this, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a power of 3000 or less. It is important to note that the KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a power of 3000 or less does not have to be one of the 2 characters that you targeted with his -3 and -2, as long as the character that you're targeting with the KO is 3000 or less. So we're running him as a 3 of, no counter. Up next, we have the Uta from OP09. She's the searcher for the deck. She's a 1-drop, 1000 counter with 2000 power. On play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You get to reveal up to 1 red-haired pirate's card and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. Important to note about this card that it is a film card. So it's not a red-haired pirate, so she will not be able to search herself. But a lot of people will leave her alone when she's on the field, so use that to your advantage. Moving on, we have the OP09 Shanks, the 10-drop 12k power with Rush, and all of your opponent's characters have minus 1000 power. This effect is active on both your and your opponent's turn as long as he's on the field and he hasn't been his effect hasn't been shut off by like a Blackbeard effect or something. He doesn't have any counter, but he's a 12k rush for 10. So he's what we're getting. We're surviving the early and mid game to get to this card. It makes combat math very favorable for us and a pain for the opponent. So up next we have the Silver's Rayleigh from OP09. He's a 5-drop 6k power, 1000 counter, and has blocker. And then on play, if your opponent has 2 or more characters with an original power of 5000 or more, you draw 2 cards and you discard 1 card from your hand. The on play, it's a little situational because your opponent has to have 2 or more characters with original power of 5 or more, and we're trying to keep the board cleared down as we're moving to the mid to late game. A lot of times it's just a 5/6 blocker, So don't be afraid to bring him out just as a 5/6 blocker, even if you can't use the on play ability. It's 5/6 body is still a good blocker, and he can also pivot to be more aggressive if need be. So this is a primary piece of removal for the deck. It's Ben Beckman from OP09. He's a 7 drop 7K with a 1000 counter, and on play, you trash up to one of your opponent's characters with a power of 6,000 or less. Important to note about this card, it says trash up to one of your opponent's characters. It's not KOing, so any character that says this character cannot be KO'd by effects, Ben Beckman doesn't care. It's trashing them. There is a difference between KOing and trashing a character. So if you can get whatever character you want down to 6,000 or power or less before Ben Beckman hits the field, he will trash it. So next we have Hongo. He's a 2K for the deck. He's a multi-purpose 2K. He's a 3 drop, 3,000 power. And he has Activate Main. You may rest this character. If your leader has the type Red-Haired Pirates, which we do, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power during this turn. So what's cool about this is Activate Main. So if he survives, you can do this turn after turn as long as you can protect him and he stays alive. And at worst case, he's a 2K in hand. So great card for the deck. Probably one of the best 2Ks we have in this deck is Hongo. Up next we have Lime Juice. He's a 3 drop, 3,000 power, 2,000 counter. On play, up to one of your opponent's characters with power 4,000 or less cannot activate blocker for the rest of this turn. So when this card comes down, it checks the power at the time it comes down. It doesn't matter if it has a printed power higher. As long as it's 4,000 power when Lime Juice hits the field and looks and checks it, the ability will work, and they cannot activate blocker for the rest of this turn. Speaking of blockers, we have 3 of our Lucky Roo. He is the Red Hair Pirates blocker, the 4 drop 5K with a counter of 1,000. He has blocker as well, like I said. And on KO, if your leader has the Red Haired Pirates type, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with an original power of 6,000 or less. Original power is what's printed on their card. So even if you try to reduce something and it was like an 8K, you try to reduce it to 6, it doesn't. It needs to be the original power. But this card is really good as a blocker because it can take essentially your opponent from having 3 swings on you to having just 2. The one that you blocked with, then you KO their other attacker, and then they have their leader still. So very good card. 4/5. I wish he was like a 4/6, but I think 4/5. I think it'd have been a little bit too good at a 4/6, but he's a good card. We're running 3. I don't think we want 4. I think 3's fine. This is a tech choice, which I see a lot of lists aren't running anymore. It's the 10 drop Goldie Roger, 13,000 power. It's one of the secret rares from OP09. He has Rush, and when your opponent activates Blocker, if you or your opponent have 0 life, you win the game. So it checks if you have 0 or your opponent has 0. So this card can literally take you from having no chance of winning to out of nowhere winning the game. It's a 1 of in the deck. I don't think we're going to add more. It's definitely a tech choice. It's not a mainstream card in a lot of lists. But 13,000 power with Rush, and they can't activate blocker if all the conditions are met. It's pretty much going to seal the game. But I like it as a 1 of. But like I said, I'm going to probably do some adjustments here at the end and do some talking. So up next we have the Porcus the Ace from Starter Deck 15. It's a 5 drop 6,000 power with 1,000 counter. Has an ability if your leader has Whitebeard Pirates included in its type. This character gains Rush. Our leader does not, so he does not have Rush. But the reason he's in the deck is the once per turn. If this character would be removed from play by one of your opponent's effects, instead you may give this character minus 2,000 power for this turn, which means it doesn't matter how they're removing it. If they're bouncing it, if they're KOing it, if they're bottom decking it, they need to do. You can give it 2,000 power to save it. So this is really good against black decks because they have to use 2 of their removal spells to get rid of this ace. And anytime black has to use 2 removal spells on one of your characters, you're feeling pretty good. He's just 3 in the deck. He has a 1K counter, 5/6 body, worst case scenario. So we have some events. Up first, we have Gum Gum Red Hawk from OP01. It's a 2-drop counter. If your leader or up to one of your characters gain 4,000 power during this battle, then you get to KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 4,000 power or less. Now, it has a trigger to give up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters minus 10,000 power during this turn. Out of life, sometimes you got to use it just to, make you survive to the next turn. Minus 10,000 pretty much shuts off any attack for the most part. But the first part of the counter, which is great, is our leader, his effect will activate when they decide they want to attack. So if your opponent's leaving like a 5K body that they want to swing with, and they haven't attached any Dawn, it's just 5K, Shanks can give it minus 1,000, making it a 4K. You can use the Gum Gum Red Hawk to protect whatever character or Shanks that you're countering with, and then KO that potential attacker. So it's a neat little interaction with the leader. I'm running 3. I'm happy with that number. So up next we have, let's see, what do we got? We have Radical Beam as a 2 Radical Beams, 1-drop counter. Your leader or up to one of your characters gain 2,000 power during this turn. Then if you have 2 or less life cards, that card gains an additional 2,000 power during this battle. So when you're at 2 life, this is essentially a 1-drop 4K counter. Great card. It's been in red decks for since OP01 for a reason. It's a really good card. I mean, not every deck runs it, but a lot of red decks will run this card. It does have a trigger effect out of life. Your leader or up to one of your characters gain 1,000 power during this turn. So it's important to note that it's during this turn. So if this is the top life and they hit you, you give Shanks the 1,000 counter for the turn. He's a 6K leader for the remainder of their turn, making it a little awkward for their attacks. So, and the last event we have is Bad Manners Kick Course. It's the 0-drop red event with counter. You may trash 1 card from your hand to give up to one of your leaders or characters plus 3,000 power during this battle. It has a trigger as well to give up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters minus 3,000 power during this turn. The trigger is situational. Sometimes you got to use it just to prevent your opponent from getting an extra attack in. But we do have a lot of cards in the deck that don't have counter. So being able to trash one of those to give 3,000 is really good for the deck. And it's kind of needed, I think. But overall, I've been having a lot of fun with this list. I do have some gameplay videos up, and I'll be uploading more gameplay videos to go with this deck. That's the exact deck that I'm showcasing today. Is the one that in the gameplay videos without any adjustments. So I think, like I said, overall, the 1-drop Shanks or this 10-drop Shanks, I understand the purpose of the deck or of the card, but a lot of the things that you want to remove, mostly the Blackbeard, he's a 12K, so and he's already using the 10 of your Dawn. So I may end up uh maybe going like a 3rd dragon. Maybe instead of running the Shanks, we cut the Shanks out for a 3rd dragon. I'd like that, I think. I'm not gonna make any adjustments to the list itself, but I was like just kind of brainstorming here a little bit with you guys. The Marco, I like it. It's just a 5/6, but I've seen a lot of lists running this card, Yasop, and I kind of see the appeal of Yasop over the Marcos. So I may end up switching those. Like I said, I did look at the winning list of that 10-0 list. Congrats to the winner there. And I like some of his card choices. But I've had a lot of success with this deck, so I don't want to just copy and paste another deck because I don't understand. Because just because you have a list doesn't mean you can run that list. You got to understand the decisions behind each card going into the deck and what situations that those cards were put into that deck for. So if you're going in blind without a lot of playtest, you're not going to succeed with someone else's list without the grind. But I do like this card. I get why it's there in that person's list. So I may end up cutting the Marcos down. Now, my local meta has a variety of things. So, the aces, I may end up keeping those in because I do like this against the black matchups. The Goldie Roger, like I said, it's a tech choice. This probably will go out. I'll probably end up removing this Goldie Roger at some point for something else. I'm not 100% sure like what to remove it for. Um, like I don't think we want a fourth Lucky Roo because it's a 4 drop. So there's some like dope in the dopey matchup. They just bounce this and or they bottom deck it. So like I don't want a fourth Lucky Roo for that again because it's gonna weaken my dopey matchup. I feel. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. What suggestions that you may change in this list. If there's a card that I said I would take out and you would disagree, let me know. Like I like having positive criticism. Like I might have not seen the importance of why Marco is an absolute need for the deck. But make sure you guys like and subscribe. I got a lot of gameplay videos coming out with Shanks. I have some up on my channel right now, and I'll have more coming probably in the next day or so. So thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.